Everything you think you know about staying warm is wrong. Pirates figured out how to turn a freezing death trap into a cozy sanctuary using methods so simple, it's embarrassing we forgot them. While you're layering clothes and burning money on heating, they had one technique that changed everything. Pirates had it figured out long before your grandpa started complaining about heating bills. While you're cranking the thermostat and still shivering in your house, these sea rogues were staying toasty in minus 40-degree weather using nothing but what Mother Nature provided. Here's the kicker. They stuffed their ship walls with whatever they could find. Straw, moss, sawdust, even old rope fibers. Sounds like something you'd find in a barn, right? But this makeshift insulation worked better than you'd expect. They'd pack it tight between the wooden planks, creating a barrier that kept the bitter cold from sneaking through every crack and crevice. The really clever part was how they layered everything. Think of it like your grandmother's quilting technique, but for an entire ship. Wood planks on the outside, then a thick layer of natural materials, followed by more wood or sometimes felt if they could get their hands on it. This wasn't just random stuffing. They knew exactly what they were doing. Well, here's what made it work so well. These natural materials trapped air pockets, and trapped air is one of nature's best insulators. Your expensive winter jacket uses the same principle, just with fancy synthetic materials instead of barnyard leftovers. Pirates discovered that ships built this way could stay 10 degrees warmer inside than the freezing water surrounding them. That's the difference between uncomfortable and downright dangerous when you're stuck on the open ocean for months. And the weird part is, this crude insulation meant they didn't need to wear as many layers below deck. While sailors on poorly insulated ships looked like walking laundry piles, pirates could move around freely in their quarters without turning into human popsicles. The layered planking technique was like adding extra blankets to your bed, except these blankets were made of wood and natural fibers. Every layer prevented precious heat from escaping into the unforgiving ocean air. Some crews got so good at this that their ships became legendary for staying warm. Other sailors would trade information about which captains knew the insulation secrets because joining the wrong crew could literally mean freezing to death. But even the best insulation was only the beginning of their warming strategy. The real genius came from what they did to the outside of their ships, a waterproofing technique that doubled as thermal protection and kept them warmer than most landlubbers realized possible. The secret weapon pirates had against bone-chilling cold? Tar and pitch slathered all over their ships like grandmother's cold remedy on a sore throat. These weren't just random gooey substances pirates found lying around. Tar and pitch were the original winter-proofing technology, centuries before anyone invented fancy insulation materials. Pirates knew something we've forgotten. Sealing every crack and gap was the difference between staying warm and becoming a popsicle on the high seas. Here's where it gets interesting. When pirates coated their ship's hull with tar and pitch, they weren't just keeping water out. They were creating an airtight barrier that trapped warm air inside while keeping Arctic winds from sneaking through wooden planks. Think of your house during winter. Every little draft makes you miserable, right? Well, ships have thousands of potential gaps between planks, and pirates eliminated them all. But the genius didn't stop there. Pitch has natural insulating properties that modern materials struggle to match. This sticky black substance formed a protective shell around the entire vessel, like wrapping your house in a giant winter coat. The thermal barrier was so effective that some ships could maintain interior temperatures 15 to 20 degrees warmer than the brutal conditions outside. The maintenance was brutal, though. Pirates had to reapply this coating constantly because salt water and ice would chip it away. But they never skipped this step, even when supplies ran low. Why? Because they'd learned the hard way that a ship without proper sealing became a floating icebox where men literally froze to death. Modern scientists have tested historical tar and pitch samples, and they're amazed at how well these materials insulated against extreme cold. We're talking about substances that could keep a wooden ship warmer than some modern apartments during winter storms. Then there's the waterproofing aspect that saved lives. Moisture is warmth's worst enemy. When water seeps into wood and freezes, it creates ice crystals that make everything colder. Pirates understood this instinctively. Their tar and pitch coating prevented moisture from penetrating the hull, keeping the ship's interior dry and significantly warmer. Some veteran pirates became so skilled at applying these coatings that their ships could survive months in sub-zero conditions without losing their warming properties. They developed techniques for layering different types of pitch that created multiple thermal barriers. The downside? Ships reeked like a construction site and the stuff got everywhere. But pirates figured smelling like tar was better than freezing to death. What's truly remarkable is how they combined this external sealing with their next warming strategy: strategic fire placement that would make modern heating engineers jealous. Now here's where things get really interesting. While you're cranking up your thermostat and watching your electric bill skyrocket, pirates had figured out the ultimate heating hack centuries ago. Fire pits weren't just randomly placed danger zones on these ships. Oh no. These were carefully engineered heating systems that would make your modern HVAC technician jealous. Pirates built metal-lined fireboxes right into the deck, complete with proper ventilation and heat distribution channels. Think of it like having a wood-burning stove, except this one could survive getting tossed around by 20-foot waves. The genius wasn't just in having fire aboard a wooden ship without burning it down. That's impressive enough, considering most of us can barely manage a backyard barbecue without setting something ablaze. But these pirates positioned their fire pits strategically to create heat circulation throughout the entire vessel. Hot air would flow through carefully planned gaps between deck boards, turning the whole ship into one giant heating system. But wait, it gets better. Those lanterns you see in every pirate movie, they weren't just for dramatic lighting during sword fights. Each lantern was a mini heater placed at specific intervals to create warm zones throughout the ship. Pirates would cluster these oil-burning lanterns in sleeping areas, creating pockets of warmth that could raise temperatures by 15 degrees or more. Here's the kicker, though. While your house loses heat through every crack and crevice, pirates had mastered heat retention. They'd bank their fires at night, keeping coals glowing just enough to maintain warmth without wasting precious fuel. It's like having a programmable thermostat, except theirs actually worked reliably. The really clever part was fuel management. Pirates couldn't exactly pull into a gas station when they ran low on firewood, so they'd burn everything from rope scraps to barrel staves, even old sails when desperate. One captain's log mentions keeping his crew warm for 3 weeks, burning nothing but broken furniture and worn-out boots. Now that's recycling with purpose. And here's something your history teacher probably never mentioned. Some pirate ships maintain cabin temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees, even when outside temperatures drop to minus 40. That's warmer than most people keep their homes today, and they were doing it in the middle of the ocean during blizzards. Makes you wonder how they stayed so toasty without turning into human popsicles, right? Well, the secret wasn't just about fire. These seafaring rogues had mastered another warming technique that most people today have completely forgotten about. Pirates had clothing figured out in ways that would make modern outdoor gear companies jealous. While you're layering on 3 sweaters and still feeling like a popsicle, these seafaring rogues stayed toasty with wool and leather combinations that actually worked. Wool was their secret weapon. Not the scratchy stuff your grandmother knitted, but thick, oily wool that kept them warm, even when soaked. Pirates knew something most people forget today. Wool insulates when wet. Your cotton hoodie? Useless the moment it gets damp. But a pirate's wool coat turned into a portable heater, trapping body heat like a furry blanket that followed them around. Then there's the leather factor. Pirates layered leather over their wool, creating a wind-breaking shell that modern hikers spend hundreds of dollars trying to replicate. Leather pants weren't a fashion statement, they were survival gear. The combination worked like an early version of those expensive layering systems, except pirates figured it out centuries before REI existed. But here's where it gets interesting. Their bedding setup. Pirates didn't have sleeping bags, so they invented something better. Canvas sacks stuffed with whatever insulating material they could find. Straw, feathers, even shredded rope. Makes sense, right? These makeshift sleeping systems worked like oversized sleeping bags. The canvas kept moisture out while the stuffing trapped heat. Some crews got creative, filling their bedding with sheep's wool or even dried seaweed. Whatever floated their boat, literally. The genius part? Pirates kept spare clothing and bedding in sealed chests away from moisture. Dry clothes meant warm clothes. They understood that staying warm wasn't just about having thick materials, it was about keeping those materials functional. Well, there's also the maintenance aspect. Pirates spent time caring for their gear because their lives depended on it. They'd oil their leather regularly, patch holes immediately, and share clothing when needed. Your modern winter jacket might fall apart after one season, but a well-maintained pirate coat lasted years. And the weird part is how they dealt with washing. Pirates rarely washed their wool clothing because they knew water would strip away the natural oils that provided insulation. Instead, they'd air dry everything and brush off dirt. Gross by today's standards, but surprisingly effective for staying warm. The shared sleeping arrangements helped too. When temperatures dropped below freezing, pirates would pile their bedding together, creating communal warm zones that kept everyone alive through brutal nights. But clothing and bedding were just part of their survival strategy. The real magic happened in how they designed their living spaces to trap and multiply that precious body heat. Now here's where things get really clever. Pirates figured out something that modern apartment dwellers spending $200 on heating bills might want to pay attention to. The crew quarters weren't spacious by any stretch of the imagination. We're talking about spaces so tight that if you rolled over in your hammock, you'd probably elbow your neighbor in the ribs. But guess what? That cramped living situation was actually genius-level engineering disguised as necessity. See, when you pack 12 to 15 grown men into a space smaller than your average bedroom, something magical happens. Body heat starts working overtime. Each pirate became a walking, talking space heater, putting out roughly the same BTUs as a small furnace. Multiply that by a dozen sailors, and you've got yourself a toasty little sanctuary floating on frozen water. The math here is pretty impressive. One human body generates about 350 BTUs per hour just sitting around. Get 15 pirates crammed together, and you're looking at over 5,000 BTUs heating that tiny space. That's enough warmth to keep temperatures hovering around a comfortable 60 degrees, even when it's minus 40 outside. But here's the kicker. Pirates didn't just stumble into this arrangement. They planned it. Smart crews would actually rotate sleeping positions throughout the night. The guys on the outside edges who caught the brunt of the cold walls would swap spots with the lucky fellows nestled in the middle. It was like a human rotisserie system, ensuring everyone got their fair share of warmth. Think about it this way. Ever notice how much warmer you feel when you're cuddled up with someone versus sleeping alone? These pirates basically turned that concept into a survival strategy, except instead of one person, they had 14 backup heaters. The cramped quarters also meant less airspace to heat up. Physics worked in their favor here. Smaller volume equals faster warming, which equals less fuel burned, keeping the space livable. Modern tiny house enthusiasts would be proud. Some crews got so good at this shared warmth system that they could maintain comfortable temperatures without burning a single piece of wood in their quarters. The collective body heat, trapped in that small space, did all the work. And let's be honest, after a day of hauling ropes and battling freezing winds, even the most antisocial pirate probably appreciated having warm bodies nearby. Of course, this cozy arrangement came with its own unique challenges, but those clever solutions pirates developed for dealing with close quarters living might surprise you even more. Pirates didn't just slap some wood together and hope for the best. These seafaring rogues knew secrets about shipbuilding that would make today's yacht designers weep with envy. The rounded hull design wasn't just for looks, though it certainly beat the boxy appearance of modern cruise ships that look like floating apartment buildings. This curved shape deflected icy spray like a shield, keeping gallons of freezing water from soaking the crew. Less water meant less evaporation, stealing precious heat from everyone aboard. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates used something called clinker construction, overlapping wooden planks that fit together tighter than my grandfather's grip on his wallet. Each plank overlapped the one below it, creating a seal that modern weather stripping can barely match. No gaps meant no drafts whistling through at 3 a.m. to wake you up colder than a mother-in-law's stare. The craftsmanship involved was ridiculous. Shipwrights would spend hours ensuring each plank curved perfectly against its neighbor. They'd use hot pitch to seal every tiny crack, then add oakum, basically old rope fibers, stuffed into any remaining spaces. This wasn't just waterproofing, it was creating a thermal barrier that trapped warm air inside like a wooden thermos bottle. Well, here's something that'll surprise you. These ships actually floated higher in the water because of their tight construction. Higher meant less hull surface exposed to frigid waves constantly trying to steal heat through conduction. Smart, right? The Vikings had mastered some of these techniques centuries earlier, but pirates perfected them for longer voyages in brutal conditions. They discovered that certain wood combinations worked better than others. Oak for strength, pine for flexibility, and cedar for its natural oils that repelled moisture and insects. Maritime archaeologists studying shipwrecks from this era found something fascinating. Vessels built with these overlapping techniques showed remarkably less cold damage than ships constructed with simpler methods. The wood fibers remained intact longer, suggesting the interiors stayed consistently warmer. Some of these forgotten techniques are actually being rediscovered by modern boat builders who can't figure out why their expensive fiberglass hulls feel like ice boxes while replica pirate ships stay cozy. The answer lies in understanding that every joint, every overlap, every carefully placed plank was designed with one goal: keeping the brutal cold exactly where it belonged, outside. And speaking of keeping things outside, pirates had even more clever tricks up their sleeves when it came to solving the everyday problems that turn grown men into shivering children. Pirates had problems we still face today. Ever tried to keep warm air from escaping through tiny gaps in your house? Well, these seafaring rogues figured out something brilliant centuries before weather stripping became a thing. They'd slather animal fat, usually whale blubber or pig lard, into every crack and crevice they could find. Sounds gross? Maybe. But it worked like magic. The fat would harden in cold weather, creating an airtight seal that modern caulk companies would envy. It's basically the grandfather of spray foam insulation, except it smelled like last week's barbecue. But here's where it gets clever. Pirates didn't just randomly smear fat everywhere like teenagers making a mess in the kitchen. They targeted specific problem areas first. Window frames, door edges, gaps between planks, anywhere cold air loved to sneak in like an uninvited mother-in-law. The really smart crews would mix sawdust with the animal fat. This created a paste that stayed put better than pure fat alone. Think of it as the world's first weatherproofing compound invented by people who probably couldn't spell insulation if their lives depended on it. Then there's the rope trick that'll blow your mind. Pirates would soak rope in melted fat, then stuff it between loose planks. As the fat cooled, it expanded slightly, creating a perfect seal. Modern boat builders still use a similar technique, just with fancier materials that cost 50 times more. And the weird part is how they dealt with condensation. You know that annoying moisture that builds up on cold windows? Pirates solved this by rubbing fat on interior surfaces too. The thin layer prevented water droplets from forming, keeping everything drier and warmer. Some crews got so good at this they could maintain cabin temperatures 20 degrees warmer than outside, even in howling winds. That's better than some modern apartments with broken heating systems. But wait, there's more to their genius. They'd use different types of fat for different jobs. Whale blubber for exterior sealing because it lasted longer. Pig fat for interior work since it didn't smell as fishy. Beef tallow for emergency repairs because it hardened quickly. The maintenance wasn't fun though. Every few months they'd have to scrape off old fat and apply fresh coats, like painting your house, except stickier and with more complaints from the crew. What's really fascinating is how they combined all these sealing tricks with their other warming methods, because the best insulation in the world won't help if you can't generate heat in the first place. Well, here's something modern folks completely miss about staying warm. Pirates knew that misery shared is misery halved. Actually, scratch that. For them, warmth shared was warmth doubled. These sea rogues turned body heat into a group project. While you're cranking up your thermostat and getting slapped with a $300 electric bill, pirates figured out the ultimate free heating system: each other. Smart? Absolutely. Romantic? Not so much. Picture 12 grown men crammed into a space smaller than your bedroom. Sounds awful, right? But when temperatures drop to -40, suddenly that human sardine can become prime real estate. Each pirate was basically a walking furnace pumping out about 98 degrees of pure warmth. Do the math. 12 furnaces in a tiny room meant nobody was shivering. The weird part is how they made it work socially. These weren't exactly the let's cuddle type of guys. They'd slash throats over stolen rum, but somehow figured out sleeping rotations that kept everyone toasty. Early shift got the warm spots, late shift inherited the heat. Like a bizarre timeshare system, except instead of a beach condo, they were sharing leftover body warmth. But here's where it gets interesting. They discovered something your grandmother knew but you've forgotten. Singing together actually raises body temperature. Those sea shanties weren't just entertainment, they were survival tools. Group singing increases circulation and gets blood pumping faster than most people realize. Then there's the storytelling angle. Pirates would gather around their fire pits swapping tales for hours, not because they were particularly chatty, mind you. They learned that keeping their minds busy prevented that dangerous mental slide that happens when you're really cold. You know that feeling when you're freezing and just want to give up? Yeah, pirates beat that with boring stories about their mothers back home. They even had buddy systems for the really brutal nights. 2 pirates would share blankets and alternate staying awake to keep the fire going. Your modern personal space concept would have gotten everyone killed in those conditions. Makes sense, right? While you're alone in your house, fighting the cold with expensive heating systems and still feeling chilly, these guys were running a cooperative warmth operation that could keep dozens of people comfortable in conditions that would hospitalize most modern folks. The social element wasn't just nice to have, it was the secret ingredient that made all their other warming tricks actually work. Because staying warm isn't just about insulation and fire. Sometimes it's about not facing the cold alone.